All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking today. It is a Thursday, and we've got Socrates, we've got Jack Quirk, we've got a Detroit Lion with us. Let's go with Jack. Hey, Jack, how's it going today?
Hey, what's going on there, Hal?
It's really great to talk to you. I kind of wanted to talk to you not just about your latest on Substack, Socrates Speaks, but just to kind of debrief with you the latest occurrences politically, because I've been really down about where we are as a country. I don't know if you're feeling the same way, and maybe just try to come up with some ways to respond.
Yeah. Well, I think despair is a rational response. You know, the guys. Unfortunately, we don't have a parliamentary system where they can vote no confidence, and remove him from office. He's got 4 years and that's it. The only way to get rid of him is impeachment and conviction in the Senate. And, I think my theory is that after what happened to Nixon, the Republicans decided, we're not going to let that happen again. We don't care if our candidate is a child killer. We're just going to double down on our support of him no matter what. So I'm just thinking that's what happened here. But, he's terrible. He's just got, it's almost like he's a caricature of what we expected from him to begin with. And it's, I shouldn't laugh because it's a human tragedy for a lot of people, but I guess that's my way of responding to tragedy. The Alligator Alcatraz, you've got to be kidding. How does that even come to pass in the United States? The pulling people off the streets, chasing people at Home Depots. It's crazy. and then he has he's Putin come and visit him in Alaska, so Putin doesn't have to travel over any countries where the International Criminal Court has jurisdiction. So we basically help him avoid process, basically. And then they sit there and they talk for 15 minutes. What did they talk about? I don't know. Did Putin just give him his marching orders? What the heck is going on with that guy? And then after that talk, Putin's attacks became even worse in Ukraine. I'm gonna say it, and because I believe it. I think Trump is a Russian asset.
Wow.
If you think about,
I'll just think about what you were saying. He's worse, even worse than I feared. Now, I had, I did not support Harris for president because she just wouldn't give me anything on the Israeli, I call it a genocide in Gaza. So does Bernie now. He finally came around and said that. We'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. That's where I usually lead off, Jack, as you know. But I've got to admit, this guy's even worse than I feared in many areas. And I don't know. I really kind of feel like real, as you said, despairing, hopeless. Not sure what, if anything, we can do to try to stop him.
Well, I went into that to one of those No Kings protests, which is. Yeah, it's pleasant to see people up here in this far corner of on the outside of civilization coming out to hold signs and so forth. Because you usually think of rural areas as more Republican, but there's people everywhere that see it, and But no, I do. I think he's a Russian asset. I think if you were to occupy our country, look what he does. He's tearing down half the government. He's put a nutcase in charge of the health department. He's going to, so he's deliberately trying to destroy the scientific basis of what the American government does. Well, if we were to be occupied by a foreign power, and And what would happen that would be worse than this? I mean, uh, I mean,
Do
I'm
you?
gonna,
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I don't
no,
mean.
that's just I just look at that and I'm just saying, look, he's got to be, there's, I mean, that's got to be it. That's got to be it. I mean, he lets Putin do whatever he wants, and he engages in atrocities, and he's dismantling the government.
It's interesting that you single out the policy towards Russia at least several times as what seems to be particularly troubling to you. Your post on Substack, and by the way, folks should definitely check it out. It's really, really good. Socrates Speaks at Substack. So check it out. By the way, the link to the latest is in the show description on YouTube. Dark Times. And it's interesting you're talking about Russia, but in Dark Times, you talk about an issue that for me is actually much more problematic than the relationship we have now with Russia. And that is the incredibly cruel and inhumane treatment of immigrants. And I thought you did a really strong job with it. So I asked you to come on to discuss that. And also the other area where Trump's policies I find are just beyond the pale is the continuation and in some ways even worsening of the Harris-Biden incredibly tight relationship with Israel, continuing to promote the atrocities in Gaza. So I think we can all agree these are terrible, terrible things.
Oh, sure. I mean, I think that we should have started cutting off military aid to Israel when they started engaging in the illegal settlements. I mean, they're breaking international law, and that's just, that's it. And when you consider the fact that Netanyahu actually was giving aid to Hamas to stay in power as a way of dividing Hamas and the Palestinian Authority on the West Bank, so that they wouldn't be able to get a state, a Palestinian state, and then so basically, the whole thing blows up in his face when Hamas, acts like Hamas. Unfortunately, there's still some hostages there. But we're so in many respects, Netanyahu brought this out, made this happen, and now he's engaging in, he knows, it's obvious to everybody that the hostages are probably in those tunnels, and the way to do it would have to be on the ground. What is bombing the heck out of Palestine, or Gaza, I should say? What's the point? What's the point in blowing up buildings and houses? How is that supposed to accomplish anything?
Well, what it actually has probably led to some of the deaths, right? It's probably actually Israel military has probably killed some of the hostages by its bombing. They say that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no.
Let me just urge folks real quick, Jax, please do subscribe. Bottom right, click the bottom right blue and white square. Also, we hope you'll like us. Any kind of reaction, including negativity, comments that, say you can't stand what we're doing. Anything like that is helpful, actually, for us to beat the algorithm. And I do hope you'll join us on Facebook. Great to have Jack Quirk with us today. And again, I do want to urge you to check out Dark Times on Substack by Jack if you haven't yet done so. Just real quick, Jack, let me share the latest casualty death numbers. This is from the Turkish news agency Anadolu Ajansi. I would note that the UN accepts the numbers that the Palestinian Health Ministry provides in terms of deaths. They consider those numbers, as do many other international sources, to be reliable. Israel's often claimed that those numbers, the casualty count and the death count, is exaggerated. If anything, we've seen it is probably an undercount significantly. And you can tell, too, just by looking at the images. I mean, the entire region has been flattened. So it's hard to believe It's the death count is only 65,100. 4 more also starved to death, which I think is wholly beyond the pale, right? I mean, they're starving families, they're starving children, Jack. Is this the worst thing in terms of, I guess, just deliberate inhumanity? And I know how upset you are by Russia's attack on Ukraine and our failure, I guess, I don't know, to stop it. But is this, in terms of just pure criminal activity by a government, the worst you've seen in your lifetime, do you believe?
Well, I don't. I mean, there's atrocities all the time. I don't really see any point in ranking them, but I mean, we've engaged in a little bit of that. The United States has ourselves. There's, I mean, anything like this. I mean, it's horrific what's happening there. I mean, it's terrible. I mean, the people aren't holding the people in Gaza are not holding hostages. It's Hamas that are holding hostages, but they're the ones that are getting it. You know, it's if your purpose was to get the hostages released, Israel has picked the most ineffective way of going about that. I mean, especially since we know that Hamas has tunnels. It's mind blowing how ineffective something like that would be when you go about it that way.
Do you think these actions by Israel and its military call into question the legitimacy of what they call themselves the Jewish state?
Well, that's not for me to say, but I mean, obviously, it was put together. The state was put together by Jews, or Zionist Jews, and I know that at least some of the Orthodox Jews do not recognize the Israeli state. They're waiting for the messianic outcome as far as that goes, but what's a legitimate country? I mean, it was recognized by the United Nations. Okay.
I guess what I'm saying is not whether it exists. Obviously, Israel exists. Yeah. It's more whether it should exist, right? I mean, that's more my question. Whether it should exist, at least as it is currently constituted, a majority Jewish state in a region where there are many Palestinians who do not have self-determination, in part because Israel refuses to recognize them.
Yeah, well, I think that you got to go back to the history of that. Okay, that the Israeli state was founded in 1947, and I think it was rational for Jewish people at that time to be looking for a place where people didn't want to kill them. You know, I mean that was right after the Holocaust and everything else. So I mean, it's you can't say that, at least at that time, that it wasn't a rational thing to do to create a Jewish state. So I think it's a lot more complicated than I guess your question seems to presuppose. You have to go back to the history of what's going on, and the best I can do is put myself in somebody else's shoes and try and imagine what I would feel like if that were the case. I think that the whole thing started. I mean, so many problems, particularly in the Middle East and the world, are due to British interference, drawing arbitrary lines and things like that. So, we're just coming out this end of history, and excuse me, and you just need a whole treatise to come about. So I can't really say that the Israeli state is illegitimate. No, I think that their behavior lately is irrational. If the idea is to get hostages released and put it into an Hamas, it's I'm not saying it's irrational to get rid of Hamas, but but the way they're going about it is senseless. It's not. It doesn't seem to be designed to accomplish anything positive.
Well, what many have said now is it is just designed to cleanse the area of Palestinians. And that seems to be a position that now Bernie Sanders has acknowledged this after years of pressure by activists on the left to call it what Israel's doing a genocide. He is now doing that. I'm not going to ask you on your for your view on that, except do you think this bespeaks either a change in U.S. policy, Sanders' statement, or on the Democratic side? And in terms of U.S. policy, I understand Republicans are in charge. We have seen a few Republicans, including Marjorie Taylor Greene, who have used the term genocide to describe Israel's actions.
Yeah, sometimes Marjorie Taylor Greene surprises you, doesn't it? Doesn't she? Yeah, I mean that's first of all, Bernie Sanders isn't even really a Democrat. So no, I don't think it's a shift in policy. I mean, at some point, you'd have to look at what's going on there and realize that there's and just expect that the horror of what's happening is going to change some views. But unfortunately, our political class seems to only be able to pay attention to one thing, and I honestly don't know how much AIPAC is responsible for maintaining support for Israel at this point in time when it's obviously not the moral thing to do. And especially since we could actually do something about it if we changed our stance. That's my and I think morally we have to. It's just too much what's going on there, and I don't know what I honestly don't know what else to say about it. I mean I know that this is kind of your chief issue, but I think it's a worthy one. But there's really nothing to say other than that we're going to have to cut off aid to Israel until it stops.
And we're clearly not going to do that. Do you think?
Not with Trump in charge, for crying out loud.
Do you? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, since you didn't vote for Harris, I mean, I've told you what I thought about that. It was just helping getting Trump in charge. So,
do you think if the Democrats spoke as one voice and demanded that we end support for Israel, let's put it that way, all support, cut them off completely, and started rallying, started campaigning, going into their town hall meetings, speaking on the Sunday shows, saying this is absolutely immoral, this is evil, this is wrong, we must stop supporting Israel. And if you will vote for us in the midterms, that's what we will do. Do you think that would have an impact on do you think A, they should do that, and B, would that have any impact on the administration?
Not at the moment. No, Republicans are only afraid of one person, that's Donald Trump. And so, they don't care what the Democrats say, especially since the Democrats are in the minority right now. Is that going to be a successful electoral strategy? Don't think so. I think, I mean, it certainly can be there, but I wouldn't say that they should lead with that because, I think most people are looking at, the price of eggs, they're looking at their own survival. The world's an evil place. And so people just want to be able to survive in it. I think the Democrats should, I think that if they became a Labor Party, then they might have more success.
So that was going to be my follow-up. What do you recommend if you were the advisor to the DNC and to every Democratic elected? What would you advise their strategy be for next year's midterms?
Well, get off, first of all, what not to do, okay? I mean, I don't know the exact thing, but I can tell you that with a fair measure of confidence that most people are not in favor of male athletes competing with girls. Okay, that's just not women. I mean, that's just, first of all, that doesn't make any sense. It's not fair to the women, and it's an anti-feminist thing to support. But things of that nature are what's are what is causing the Democrats to be so unpopular with people, because they look at those things and it just seems wackadoodle to them. Okay.
Well, there's, let me just respond, because I agree with you that there should be a clear-cut segregation by sex at conception when it comes to sports. I think that's an issue where to the extent there are still a few Democratic states that don't do that, I think they're making a mistake. So I agree. But don't you think what's the real issue is the Democrats, and you brought it up, Jack, they don't embrace working people. They don't embrace the priorities, not in terms of cultural divide, but just in terms of economic justice. They aren't fighting to make life a little easier for working people.
Of course you're right. And what I'm saying is they ignore that, and they put that on the back burner to the extent they acknowledge it at all, and lead with the kind of stuff that we were just talking about. If it's almost a parallel thing, because Donald Trump is such a it's as if he was the representative of an occupying power in terms of the way he's running the country. The way the Democrats run their party, I would think that they were Republican shills within the Democratic Party. It's as if they're trying to lose. And why? They deliberately take positions that are opposed to what most people believe and think. And I'm not saying that the popular will should be the determiner, but hold on a second, I got to get through this.
Oh, we're losing Jack here. Let me just change the video look a little bit. I think we lost you, Jack. I don't know if you're still with us. That's unfortunate. I'm going to see whether he can join us again. Maybe call back if you're, because we're gone. I don't know. Maybe he was answering another call. That was an interesting use of the trans issue to say, that's from Jack, that's what we have to worry about. And I agree, Jack. I think we got you back here. That again, I think what I've said many times. We're going to put Jack right back on the screen here. What I've said many times, just to get back into the discussion, is you can't beat something with nothing. Trump, for all of his bombast and his ugly rhetoric about immigrants, now talking about cracking down on liberal groups based on a non-existent terror network. Right. For all of that, he does stand for things, and the Democrats seem to not stand for anything. Even the issue of trans rights, which you raised, many Democrats, perhaps the majority, don't. We've certainly seen many come out and say this is not an issue we should be supporting. So I think they've got to identify a few areas that are popular, that are consistent with long-term democratic values, and I think fight for those.
Well, I've said that the Democrats should be a labor party, and by labor I mean labor union, and we should be supporting the rights of working people to organize, to get proper wages, perhaps even go further and to get a situation where working people are getting shares in the companies they work for. There's a lot of things that need to be done, but the Democrats ignore it.
Policies like Medicare for All, for example, are extremely popular. More than 50% of Americans and probably 80% of Democrats support single-payer health care. Likewise, cutting off Israel is actually the preferred position of most Americans. So these are very popular positions. They do unite working people, as opposed to the trans issue, which really does divide, because there are working people who are trans or who have trans people in their family, and they support, they support that. So I think, fight on the economic battle. That worked extremely well for Democrats for, at least 40 years in the wake of the New Deal, but they've abandoned the working class.
Yes, they have. Yes, they have. And Bill Clinton was actually the one that really led the Democratic Party in that direction, because he decided, well, since the Republicans are winning, I guess that must be because the Republicans have a more popular economic platform, and that's not the case. I mean, and shouldn't have been perceived to be the case. It's just a matter of that neither of the two major parties represents how important money is in politics. So that's
it's a tragedy. It's really it shows. I think that means we don't live in a democracy, right? It means that we live in plutocracy, caucusocracy. Choose your terms. By the way, I want to just greet Griff, who's watching on Facebook, commenting. Thanks, great to see you there, Griff. I think you're in a different time zone, and I appreciate your checking us out. And hope your knee feels better. All right. This post really I really took to this that you posted here, Jack. This is what I've been saying. Americans are busy hating each other when we could just tax the rich and solve 90% of our problems. Isn't that the function of people like now the late Charlie Kirk, to pit us against each other on identity issues, on cultural issues, to prevent us and I shouldn't even say us, but to prevent poor, struggling, and working people from uniting along class lines?
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, that's it. I mean, look, you could expect that from somebody like Charlie Kirk, but the truth is that the Democratic Party doesn't actually help in that regard either, as we've just been discussing.
No, 100%, Jack.
Yeah. Now there's now I have to take issue with your strategy, which is to vote green. I don't see how that's. I think that if the Greens entered the Democratic Party, they could influence the Democrats. But what they do is they go off into their in their political ghettos, and leave the corporate Democrats in charge, and so that's not helping. I think nobody's going to. Let me put it this way. If there were three major parties in the United States, okay, with a fairly equal chance to obtain the presidency, the House of Representatives would always be the ones to pick the president, because you have to get the majority of the Electoral College to win the presidency. And so if you had three or four major political parties, the vote for president would always go to the House of Representatives. And according to the Constitution, it's one vote per state. And
Jack, you're saying, let's take this on, because I think there's clearly a big disagreement. I can understand the argument at this time, when you look at how bad Trump is, to say, okay, well, Harris was terrible, but Trump's even worse. We had to vote for Trump. Of course, the flip side of that would be even if somehow Harris had won, in many ways, we would still be in terrible straits. And the table could be set for an even worse demagogue, or equally bad demagogue. It's hard to see one worse than Trump, but who knows? Anything's possible. Or an equally bad demagogue in 28. So I think that's a fair point to be made. But I want to just get to this comment you made, which is that the Greens should try to push the party to the left. But we've seen efforts to push the party to the left have consistently failed. Examples. AOC has been co-opted by the Democrats rather than the other way around. She made a very strong, impassioned plea for Harris at the DNC, including what I think we all pretty much concede was a dishonest, or at best disingenuous, statement that she was working, quote, tirelessly, unquote, for a ceasefire. We've seen that the Biden administration placated Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, the two most conservative members of the Senate, who were Democrats, rather than the left flank, the so-called squad, Bernie, and the like, when it came to policy. So I don't know why you would think infiltrating the party to the left, on the left side, would push the leadership to adopt more progressive policies.
Well, the thing is that it's like this. What do Democrats, what do political candidates need more than money?
Votes.
Votes, right. And so what the Green Party does is it siphons off the most important thing, votes. And if those votes came over to the Democratic Party, there would actually be more success for the Greens to get the things that they want. Right now, nobody has to pay attention to them, and nobody does. And then,
can I push back on that a little? I would disagree. I would say that in Michigan, for example, Harris should have looked at the critically important Muslim vote and Arab vote and said, okay, we need to address the genocide. I mean, that's a term I'm going to use. You may disagree, but I don't want to get in an argument about that right now. But I'm going to have to address the genocide. I'm going to have to be willing to call it out. And I'm going to have to be willing to entertain a Palestinian speaker at the DNC. So there was pressure for her to do that, and she still didn't do it.
Did the Green Party win the majority Arab vote in Michigan?
They got a significant percentage of it. Yes, I don't know if they got the majority, but I think they. Let me just say, I think they may have gotten a plurality of it. I don't know that though.
Well, we should look at that. But the point. Well, the Greens absolutely got no electoral votes at all, and that's what counts. You have in all but 2 states, you have to get the more votes than anybody else to get that state's electoral votes in the system as we are running it now. And yes, there are a lot of things wrong with the system as we are running it now, and we could talk about that all day. But the fact is we're in the system that we are in.
Well, how then? And that's a fair statement, Jack. You're absolutely right. So how do we, given the system, a system where working people, many, including a higher percentage than we've seen in the past of Latinos and African-American men are voting Republican. We're seeing a system where Muslims were willing to vote for Jill Stein, even though her chances of winning, they understood that she wasn't going to win, but they just could not vote for Harris, given the policies that she embraced. Given that fact, can we change the Democratic Party? And is there any other solution besides changing the Democratic Party?
Well, no, as long as the system is what it is today, no, there is no other solution other than to change the Democratic Party. You know, I'm old enough. Al, I turned 70 this year.
You look good. You look good. I didn't think you were that old.
Oh yeah, I turned 70 this year. Now the thing is that when it comes to, that means I remember I actually witnessed firsthand Jim Crow. Okay, when I went with my family in the South, so I'm that old, and it's and back in those days, it was the Democrats that were supporting that. Jim Crow, okay? Well, now you're not going to find any Democrats to support that today. But George Wallace, when he ran in 68, he came out of the Democratic Party. They were called Dixiecrats in those days. Now, what's my point? My point is that political parties change. They have the names Democratic and Republican. Well, that does all that is that they are basically receptacles for various interest groups to come in and participate. In other words, okay, and they're not they're not they don't have a fixed ideology. Okay, none of them do. Either one of them do. Actually, I shouldn't have said none of them, because Greens, Libertarians, things like that definitely do have ideologies. But the major political parties are ideologically free. They are just simply an amalgamation of their interest groups. And so if you're going to have any input at all into policy, you're going to have to become a factor in one of those interest groups. They're the gatekeepers to influence as far as public policy goes. It's not in the Constitution. It's not fair.
Well, I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that assessment. I guess the point is that interest groups have to look at a candidate and say, is this candidate good enough on issues that matter to me for me to vote for them? Or conversely, is the alternative so bad that I'll vote for this person even though I don't think they're very good? And if you look at this, now we were asking about the Muslim vote. So here you go. National results. I just put this up here from CARE show, and who knows how accurate this is, right? I mean, we're always at the mercy of the data collectors. But according to Council on Arab-Islamic Relations, the Green Party did carry the vote of Muslims. In fact, by a very significant margin, 53% of Muslims voted for Stein. And then Trump actually beat Harris both in Michigan and in the nation, which is quite extraordinary. I think partly that's due, we were talking about this, to those social issues. On a lot of social issues, Muslims are very conservative, Jack. Right. And they probably said, hey, well, if they're both equally bad or comparable on Palestine, I'll vote for the one who isn't for, trans girls in the girls' locker room. I'll vote for the one who doesn't support gay marriage or isn't as overtly in support of gay marriage. So those cultural issues may have even hurt Harris among Muslims, although I think obviously the Israel issue was the most potent. Yeah. So, I think this goes to that point. If the Democratic Party wants to win and also wants to be moral, they have to embrace policies that make life better for people and are popular.
No, I agree. But, I can't, you're right as far as what the Democratic Party must do. But where you and I are differing is how to make the Democratic Party do that. And
I don't think it's possible. I don't think it's possible. That's my point. I don't.
See, then you're despairing and you're going to go off to vote green and you're not going to have any influence at all.
Well, I've tried. Well, I know, but I disagree with that. I think influencers' responsibility should be, and it's not. I wouldn't always vote green. For example, I have been knocking on doors for Zoran Mamdani. I think he's good. My litmus test is: will they make things better? Will the candidate try to make things better, or will they at least try not to make things worse? I think Harris would have made things worse. I think we've seen Democratic presidents since Bill Clinton, at least on balance, make things worse, pursue policies that have made things worse, have deepened the income and wealth divide. And I just won't be part of that anymore. I don't believe that at this time that party, given who the leaders are, Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, they refuse to endorse Mamdani. I don't see them as bringing a better America about. I don't see that. Now, that doesn't mean I won't vote for Democrats that I like. Like I said, I support Mamdani, and he's a Democrat.
Yeah, well, okay. Now, the point is, though, is what you accomplish by doing that. You accomplish you accomplish getting people like Donald Trump in power. The Republican Party is terrible. Hal, I mean, look what they're for. I mean, they sometimes actual Nazis run for office under the Republican ticket. I mean, it's just, I guess I look at that and I say, well, this is kind of like a national emergency, that there's some severely, extremist right-wing people that are in the Republican Party and trying to get votes. And, if we keep allowing this to continue, because we're standing on principle, we're just going to have we're going to have some terrible results in the long run. We're already seeing it.
Is it the fault of people like myself who at some point say, enough, I can't vote for this candidate, they're just too bad on issues that really are important to me? Is that my fault that Trump wins, or is it the fault of that candidate? Is it the fault of the party itself, the party leaders who didn't even have a real, who basically stymied any kind of a primary?
It's your fault.
Okay,
your
and
fault.
then I'll ask you this.
Because it's called arithmetic. Okay.
How do you leverage?
The winning candidate is going to be Democratic or Republican. Okay. And since if someone put a gun to your head and said vote for one of these two people, you would vote for the Democrat. Okay. So that means when you don't vote Democratic, you're helping the Republicans.
I would posit, and I've said this many times, that the two biggest threats, crises we face are ecocide and genocide. I would flip that now. I would say genocide because I think the moral imperative is to stop Israel, even beyond ending our war on the environment, which is rendering an uninhabitable planet probably within our grandchildren's lifetime, if we have grandchildren. So those are the crises I think we have to confront. The Democrat Party and the Republican Party are both responsible for those crises. The leaders in both parties have completely failed to take them on. The Republicans deny they're even in existence. To the extent Democrats acknowledge the ecocide, the policies they pursued have worsened it. So I don't accept the argument that, well, Republicans are so bad, so awful, and the Democrats aren't that bad. I say the Democrats are that bad when you look at the crises we face. Now, you say, one more point, and then you can respond. You say, well, the only choice is that it's a Hobson's choice. You either take the lame horse or you get no horse at all. My response is that's the job of influencers. That's the job of people like Robert Reich and all the way down the line to say, hey, we're going to urge you to vote for someone who actually is a decent person, whose policies will make your life better. And we've seen a complete failure of that group as well, except with a few exceptions, mostly on YouTube and in podcasts.
Well, it's not because Robert Reich is failing. It's because the the message isn't getting across. Now, people are just looking at their bread and butter issues, and Robert Reich has got, he's obviously he's got the views that you and I would both agree with, but those voices are out there, but that's just not something that's clicking for most people.
I think because they keep hearing, Robert Reich told everyone they had to vote for Harris. Robert Reich said in 2016, Hillary Clinton would be a great president, even after he had observed Hillary Clinton, when he was in the Clinton White House, repeatedly stymie efforts to support and protect working people, for example. So he is part of the problem because he's sheepdogging voters to remain in the Democratic fold, rather than demanding better from Democrats in return for support.
The point is he's right. Okay, he's right because he sees the Hobson choice that you don't, and if I don't know how. You're in Massachusetts, so there's going to be
Maryland.
Those states are going to go Democratic anyway. So I don't know, but the thing is that we have a two-party system. It's not the system I want, not the system you want, but it's the system we have. Okay, if you're playing baseball and you're a left-handed hitter that wants to get a home run, if the right field is 350 feet, 312 feet isn't going to get it. And see, you got to play in the stadium you're in. You're trying to play in a different stadium that isn't there. That's what it boils down to. Here I stand.
You're playing. You're the manager who's putting players on the field who will never get you where you want to go either.
Well, I'm going to get a lot closer than
well,
you.
You think so? Don't you think? But things have steadily gotten worse. You're saying you'll get closer, but in most ways, we've seen things get steadily worse, at least since, I would say, 1980.
Oh, sure. But, then we've had Republican Congresses since then. For a long time, the Republicans couldn't get anywhere. And they couldn't get majorities in either house at all. And sometimes people would vote for Republican presidents, but but back then, of course, Republicans. I mean, we always forget that. What was it? Was it Nixon who put in the Clean Air Act or something? One of those, I can't remember, but it was
Nixon who signed the Clean Air Act. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's right. So I mean, things were a lot different back then. So, but we've had since the Reagan Revolution, we've had a shift rightward in this country, but it's also a popular shift. It's not like you put things out that you're talking about and everybody's going to say, oh yeah, he's right, let's go green. It's not like that. They're not going to do that. People are not going to do that.
Well, we disagree on that. I already explained, already set forth a couple of policies that are super popular that the Democrat Party refuses to champion that are to the left. And in fact, we've even seen polling that shows more and more American youth believe democratic socialism is preferable to capitalism.
Well,
so it's not a question of
going to Trump too.
Say again.
There's a lot of youth going to Trump too.
Right, because something will beat nothing, and the Democrats stand for nothing at all. Trump did, and Harris stood for nothing at all. What was her campaign built around? Even when she had some policies, which I frankly didn't even think were so great, but a $25,000 credit for first-time homebuyers, and more, I guess, importantly, she talked about high grocery prices and holding accountable the oligarchic suppliers of supermarkets. That got a lot of traction. People actually supported that policy. It was hard for it to get much traction because the media kept bashing it and attacking it. And it was a little, was kind of de minimis, but it was still something, and people embraced it.
Yeah. Of course,
right,
she was
Jack,
hampered.
Go ahead.
Yeah. All right. Now, she was hampered a lot in terms of what she could say because she basically had the Biden administration as a weight on her ankle because she couldn't be seen to criticize the administration she was working for at that time. So that was a little bit of a problem that she had. But I just don't. I think that Harris would have been a lot better than Trump. I mean, the things that we're seeing today, are outrageous. Anyway, you were going to ask me about my.
Well, I think a better way to phrase it would be she probably wouldn't be as bad in certain areas for sure. That's true.
That would give us some breathing room so that we could, try and affect change for the next election.
Well, why don't the Democrats look at Trump and say, this guy is awful, and this is our vision for a better America? Trump is making things worse. He said he was going to reduce prices at the groceries, but we have not seen that. Inflation is up. Trump said he would cut the budget deficit. We're not seeing that. It's going up. Trump said he would bring about peace. There's no peace in Ukraine. There's certainly no peace in Israel. Trump has failed in all these areas. This is what we will do differently. I don't hear the Democrats say that. I haven't heard any Democrat come forward and say, this is how we will do things differently and better.
Well, the bad news is that there's very little that government can actually do about prices, unless they want to impose wage and price controls. I mean, it's which, that's fine with me. I mean, if you want to do price controls, let the wages go up a little bit till it's normal. But the thing is that, I mean, that can be done. But the truth is that for the government to exercise that kind of power, people would object. We always hear from the right, socialism. Well, they don't know what socialism means usually, but controlling prices would be, that would be socialism. And but most people think that it's like the president has some knobs in his office that he can turn prices up and down. That's not the way it works. So a lot of the problem comes from civic illiteracy.
There are things that the government can do. The government can, like even Harris said, go after the price gougers. The government can be much more aggressive in pursuing antitrust actions against price fixers.
Oh,
and
sure.
it didn't do those things. The government could, I would say, impose tariffs, which would raise prices for imported goods. But it also, to the extent that there's retaliatory tariffs, you get less dumping of American foodstuffs. One thing that America has plenty of is food. And if we weren't dumping foodstuffs into Latin America to destroy their agriculture sector, then we would have more available in this country that's grown domestically. And
Right.
You're right about prices. It's tough there to a degree. You can't always control prices. But what the government could also do is raise wages for American workers so that they have more dollars to pay for those more expensive foodstuffs.
Yeah, no, I agree. But here's the thing: you can also provide agricultural subsidies to keep prices down. If you're going, and I think that's extremely important. But I mean, we're talking about we're really getting off into the weeds here. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that the government can do, but if you're going to have what's basically a market economy, well, that's a joke. There's no such thing as a free market, But yeah, you're right you're right as far as the oligopoly is taking charge of things, and And no, the Democrats don't do anything about that, but the Republicans do worse. I mean, look what's happening with Kimmel and Colbert.
Oh, well, Matt Dowd was fired from MSNBC because he pointed out that hate begets hate, and apparently that was taken as a criticism of Charlie Kirk. Yeah, we just heard that Kimmel was, I don't know if he's been fired. He was suspended indefinitely because he went after the Republicans for trying to weaponize Kirk's death to claim that there was some sort of terror network out there on the left, which is, I mean, there's no evidence to support that. That's the point. If anything, the language is worse on the right. Jack, we haven't even gotten to your column in Socrates Speaks, Star Times. We've been going for almost an hour. I want to keep this conversation going. It's great talking to you. I so appreciate your time. We'll see if we can get to it. We'll try. But I did want your take on a poll that I saw that goes to that whole issue of violence on the left versus violence on the right. We've seen a number of surveys that show, both by the U.S. government and University of Maryland, I posted those in Halitics, by the way, on Facebook, that the right wing is more responsible for violence by a very significant amount. In other words, that active shooters and other killers have been found to be much more likely to be part of a right wing identified group or organization than a left wing one. But one poll that recently came out notes that 24% of liberal identified respondents said it's okay to celebrate. I'm going to do my best to get this right because I don't have it in front of me. 24% of liberal identified, self-described liberals say it's okay to celebrate the death of a political opponent. Only 3% apparently of self-identified conservatives think it's okay to celebrate the death of a political opponent. I wanted your thoughts on that.
Well, not entirely surprised. The one thing been unhappy with the left about is, is their self-righteousness. I mean, they don't, when they can't, once you get to a certain level, there's these folks don't actually engage in reason. In terms of trying to come to a conclusion, they just they just get their positions, and then they defend them by means of emotion, and emotion isn't always rational, and wanting the death of your political opponents isn't rational, and it's immoral, but they can see themselves as being in the right because they're for this position or that position. And it's just one of the sad things about politics is we live in something that's supposed to be a democracy, but most people don't believe in it. It's, people want the imposition of their ideas, and that's they want to do that, and that's what they have to do, right? They want their ideas imposed on everybody, regardless of the vote. Now, you see that a lot in the right, and there's tokens are really obvious about it. But most people don't believe in democracy. Most people don't just sit back and say, "Okay, I lost that one. I'll wait for the next election." That's not the way people think. They want what they want. Plus, here's the other thing: I don't want to say the meat. Well,
let me just put up this. This is from Newsweek, and I don't have the actual YouGov poll numbers here, but let's talk about these specifics. So a YouGov poll conducted just a few days ago or a week ago among a number of adults found that 11% of Democrats say it's always or usually acceptable. That seems odd to celebrate the death of a public figure they oppose, compared to 6% of Republicans. So it's not quite as stark, the divide, as I had suggested. And then 71% or say it's usually or always unacceptable of Democrats, 89% Republicans. So the divide isn't quite as stark as I suggested, but still it seems notable at this point that Democrats are more likely to say it's okay to celebrate the death of a public figure you don't like. You're saying, why did you say that doesn't surprise you?
Well, like I said, it is the self-righteousness that you often see from the left. It's, I'm not trying to be a professional psychologist here, so I shouldn't get out of my lane, but yeah, I see a lot of negativity from the left, and it's easier for them to justify their position because they believe that they are holding some moral ground. And
you don't think right-wingers think they're morally correct? I mean, I see an awful lot of moral, I don't know what the right word is, arrogance, shall we say?
Yeah.
From right-wing influencers as well.
Yeah, well, sure. It's not like a clean division in that respect, but I do see more of it from the left. I do. It's just what I observe. I guess the thing is that if you try to be objective about it and see what people are actually saying and doing, that's the only way to understand things. So, no, I'm not surprised by that.
Does that survey suggest to you that there's more likely to be political violence on the left than on the right?
No, it doesn't. Because they're saying that they have the right to celebrate the death of someone. Doesn't mean they feel like they want to cause the death of someone.
I think that's exactly right. I think that's a very fair distinction. And I would just add one thing. It's at a time when Republicans are in control of government, it's more understandable that the group that's out of power would be inclined to say it's okay to celebrate because it might mean a change, right? If you look at what the current president is doing, the current Congress is doing, and you're horrified by it. You're thinking, well, my God, if we can just stop this, that would be great. And who knows, maybe if right-wing figures are off, the horror that you're observing that touches you to the core will be stopped. But if you kill a Democratic leader at this point, it really has no impact because they have no power.
They have no power, that's for sure. I don't know if they're. I don't know if
they're certainly not exercising any. To the extent they have power, they're not using it.
Well, they don't really have any. I mean, it's a zero-sum game in Congress anymore.
You can use the bully pulpit. There are Republicans that can be worked with. They can rally support for certain policies and issues and pressure aggressively some moderate, so-called moderate, pink state, purple state Republicans. They don't even try. They're not even trying that. They didn't shut down the government. They could have shut down the government back in March when the deficit was reached. They didn't do that. There's things Democrats could do.
Well, the Republicans are more willing to engage in tactics that overwhelm the other side. When the other side's in the minority, is like perfect example is Mitch McConnell not letting Obama pick a Supreme Court justice. They are more willing to use the tools in a way that wasn't intended, but by the literal wording of the Constitution and the law is available, is permissible, and that's yes. So they're better at looking for loopholes when it comes to that. But I don't know. I mean, I think the truth is that you've got these guys. Most of these politicians are supported by or financed by rich people, and rich when it comes to the things that you and I both agree on. For example, universal health coverage. Rich people, by and large, don't want that because they want to pay less taxes. They don't want to pay the taxes for all that. They don't,
well, and also some rich people own for-profit healthcare companies. And
sure.
Some rich people are very rich, are doctors who've made extraordinary sums of money as surgeons, or, sure. when you look at the medical profession, there are some who make a lot more than others, some doctors, and those are the ones who are least likely to support socialized medicine, if you want to call it that. So there's a lot of factors involved. Also, very wealthy people who own their own businesses know that healthcare is a way they can, the threat of losing one's healthcare keeps employees more tractable, more in line, right? If they know, if an employee knows they can leave a job and still have healthcare, they may be more inclined to leave a job if they're not treated very well or the pay isn't good enough.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
All right, let's get to your column. I really, it's not fair to you. I brought you on board. You have to go because we are past one, but I'll have you next week and we can talk about this.
I was about to sue you for getting me on here for under false pretenses, but that's okay.
Well, you could also sue me for your, I could for double time, right? If we go over the hour, I have to pay you twice what I've been paying you, which I'm prepared to do, Jack.
Okay, so what do you want to do? Get on the Socrates Speaks is the name of the blog.
And you can see it. Dark Times, yes. Go ahead, please.
Okay, well, it's I've been told in the past that some of my writing is a little dense because I guess it's dense. And so I've decided as a strategy to make what I write a little more entertaining, I decided to use Plato's strategy and put up Socratic dialogues. And the latest one is the thing I call Dark Times. And basically it was it's a critique of the Supreme Court's decision to reverse the temporary restraining order that the district court in Los Angeles get the government to stop doing the things that they're doing. And it's not in the regular opinions, but it's Noam versus Vasquez Perdomo, and it's it doesn't have a page site yet, but it's 606 US for those who are keeping track. And just the thing that the Department of Homeland Security are doing, and the Supreme Court is, well, they are.
So let me just ask you, because I didn't realize that. Let me just ask you, the decision green lights these mass roundups, is that correct, of individuals who are suspected to be immigrants based on various invidious factors?
Right. Well, they're basically what the Supreme Court just said is that it's okay to harass somebody and suspect them of being an illegal immigrant when they have dark skin and work in a low-wage job. I mean, how can you render a worse decision than that?
I'm horrified by it. This is the worst. You know what? I've always this cruel treatment of folks who are immigrants. But Jack, this is an area where I think a lot of Americans, maybe not a majority, but a lot of Americans, they do. Let me say it this way. What I understand is most Americans do not like the way Trump is enforcing immigration law. They think it's cruel. They think it's inhuman. They don't support it. On the other hand, Americans do want much tighter borders. They don't want people coming across who aren't, don't wait in line and jump through 10 different hoops.
Well, it's no, and I can appreciate that point of view. Although it's interesting that the Supreme Court years and years and decades ago decided that the federal government had jurisdiction over whether or not it would allow people into the country. Although if you look at the Constitution, you won't actually find it. You'll find that that Congress has a right to make rules regarding naturalization, but that's not the same thing as immigration. And when the country first started, we didn't have an immigration law, and we didn't really have an immigration law until the end of the 19th century, and that was because they wanted to keep Chinese people out. and so the whole idea of having immigration restrictions at a racial basis to begin with. But there are a lot of that's what they did. So the Supreme Court's the fact that the Congress has the power to control naturalization kind of implies that they can control immigration, but they're not the same thing. That was illogical. It's not actually in the Constitution. Now, the punchline is all this can be done in a far more humane way, and in fact, a more effective way. Okay, and that is that if you want people to stop trying to sneak into the country, then what you need to do is go after the employers who hire them. They don't come here for the welfare because they're not entitled to it, but the thing is that they do come in looking for work. Now, of course, we usually like to have people looking for work, but that's different. But they come in looking for work, and then what happens is the people hire them, and that's against the law. But the penalties for doing that are not very severe for the most part, and so the employers are not afraid to hire undocumented workers.
So let's get into that a little bit, because this is what I thought was the most fascinating aspect of the piece, Dark Money, or Dark Times rather, not Dark Money, Dark Times. Maybe it's because of Dark Money that we're in these dark times for sure, but the piece is Dark Times on Substack by Jack Quirk, and Socrates Speaks is the name of the blog itself. I was, well, first of all, I just want to say I get why native born Americans or American citizens, I get their feelings, some of their feelings about immigration, not about immigrants necessarily, but about immigration, because we all know law of supply and demand, Jack. The more you have of anything, the less it can command in the marketplace. The less of any object or service, the fewer of that object or service, the more it can command. So when you have more labor, then the price of labor goes down, the wages go down. So that explains, I think, to a significant degree, along with xenophobia, which probably is partly an evolved response to the very fact I just mentioned. That said, why not go after the employers? Is there any reason other than the fact that employers tend to be wealthy and have political influence and immigrants don't? Is that the only reason we're going after the immigrants and not the employers?
Yes. Of course. Of course, that's the reason.
But you said, I hate to throw your words at you, and I love having you on. You said, though, that there's something else that politicians want besides money. They want votes. Yeah. Wouldn't let's go after those employers who are hiring the illegals instead of you? Let's make them pay a real price for exploiting cheap labor so they don't have to pay you a living wage, so you and your family can have, a nice life. Wouldn't that be a popular position?
Well, it would be, but it's hard for the advantage of having the policy as it is now. You can excite people's racist bone, right? You can say, look at these Hispanics, these Latinos, and they're coming over across the border and taking away your jobs, and use the same kind of rhetoric that Trump does, talking about crime and so forth. Even though immigrants, whether legal or illegal, commit fewer crimes than American citizens, and that's just a fact. But those kinds of things are still utilized. And the problem is that these issues get to be so complicated, and people don't really have time to figure out whether or not they're being lied to. And Trump, for some reason, is just a superb. I mean, I am in awe of his con man abilities. He's just. It's amazing to watch, and people just follow what he says. It's amazing to see. I just and so he tells people that you gotta get rid of these Mexicans so that you can have a job or whatever else, or make your cities safer. The things that he says, which are false, but people eat it up, and I suppose the people that are going to eat that up aren't necessarily going to move to the next step, the obvious step of noticing that illegal immigrants, undocumented workers, are being hired by American employers. Yeah, and the reason you already touched about what the reason for that is, and that is that. And that is because they want to get cheap labor. It's like when some companies just move their manufacturing facilities overseas so they can get cheap labor, but the agriculture can't do that. So the way they go about it is they hire illegal immigrants who will accept lower pay, because and that's what it boils down to. Right?
Well, exactly. And Jack, also, just to say this, yes, a big part of it is the pay disparity between what you would have to pay an American citizen or an American naturalized resident versus an immigrant. But also, I think at this point, it is fair to say, and I probably always been fair to say, that there are more skilled laborers. There aren't enough American skilled laborers in the agricultural field. What I understand, I could be wrong about this is not just like some mindless task, right? That agriculture work often requires a lot of skills. It's dangerous. You have to have, been doing it for some time, first as sort of an assistant, especially with the knives, cutting the berries, whatever it is. They're thorns. It's very laborious. You have to know how to be as efficient as possible as you do it. It requires a lot of a skill set and experience that we don't have enough people who do in this country. And also, these jobs have been filled by migrant workers because different areas become ripe, right? The fruits and vegetables are ripe for picking at different times. So you move, south to north. You move from Mexico to California to Oregon or wherever, Florida to Georgia, etc. So these are areas where you do need skilled laborers. There aren't enough of in this country. And also the conditions are very, very tough. And we need to address both of those issues, I think.
Well, I had 1 day of as farm labor when I was in college. And I had to, my college days, and me and my buddy got hired by a guy that had I believe he was Mennonite, and we spent the whole day in the hot sun getting boulders out of the field and throwing them into the trailer of a tractor as we were going along. And we had to stop and ask for water and stuff like that. And I'll tell you what, that was that was quite an experience. But and it was tough work, tough work. It's not something I realized that I didn't want to aspire to that kind of labor, and I'm not proud of that. But that was I much preferred being a lazy fat attorney. And,
although there's a lot, but being a lawyer has its downs. All work is hard. All work, if you do work well, if you do your job well, it's challenging, and it has its positive and negative aspects. You're out in the sun all day. That's kind of nice. You don't have to work at night. You go home, you're done with your work. When you're a lawyer, I mean, I know this as a lawyer, it's stressful. It keeps you up at night. So, I mean, we need to create a society where all work is valued, all work is compensated fairly, and nobody is making, gazillions of dollars, especially if the work they do is to prevent others from getting, say, health care, or to figure out ways to raise prices or reduce the amount of content you get in a package when you purchase it. We seem to reward so often the wrong things, the least productive activities in our society.
Was it John Maynard Keynes who said that capitalism is the belief that fair, I can't quote it now, but anyway, he was saying that fair results would result from people acting with the worst of motives. In other words, the idea is that the idea of the market is
right. If everyone's greedy, we're all better off in the end. If the people in the marketplace act with greed and sharp practices and go to the edge and beyond, perhaps in misrepresenting the items that they sell and puff, and that somehow leads to a better outcome. These kinds of discussions, Jack, I think are very valuable, and I think that if the Democratic Party, adopted some of the rhetoric that we're using, they would be more popular. But because they are beholden to those very capitalist, corporatist interests, they won't. And so I'm going to go right back to where I was before. How are you going to break them from their joined at the hip connection to the billionaire class if you continue to vote for them every time they raise the specter of a Donald Trump?
Well, first of all, I don't know if you can break them of that at all. I mean, as long as there's campaign financing, if campaign financing was public and strictly public, we wouldn't have this problem. But that's not what we have. And unfortunately, the foxes are watching the hen houses when it comes to this issue. You know, you get the politicians to abolish private financing of campaigns, but that is really the only way to get rid of it. Unfortunately, you know, it's easy to see. I guess the thing is that it's easy to see the faults in other people, and since you and I aren't politicians, it's easy for us to see the fact that they're too reliant on corporate money. You know, but they're in it; they're in the thick of it, and so they can't see how wrong it is and how much it influences their decisions. And
or they don't care, or they made their peace with it.
Yeah, sure. Sure.
All right, Jack, before we're now at a point where I'm prepared to, end the program, but I always give my guests the last word. Was there anything we missed? And I know there's a lot to Dark Times, so you should definitely check it out. It's very well written. It is not verbose. It's not prosy. It's easy. It's an easy read. So I do urge you to check Jack's blog out there, Socrates Speaks. But was there something else in it that you wanted to highlight, or any other topic that that you didn't fully explicate, Jack?
Well, it's jgq1 .substack.com.
And you know what? I should have put it in your little your lower third there that says Jack Quirk Socrates Speaks. But let me say this. It's in the description on YouTube. It's in my description of this program. So you can click the link right there.
Okay, well, that's good. And hopefully I'll get some clicks out of this. And pleasure talking to you there, Hal.
All right, Jack, it's always great to have you on. I really appreciate you doing me the solid of coming on board. And tomorrow is Friday, so I will be here for the free-for-all. Thank you all for being part of Halitics. Enjoy the rest of your day.